I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Today we have Van Jones, Tony Robbins, and Billy Corgan on the show. These are three of my favorite conversations I've had over the last year, not just because these are incredible people, but because of the context and the specific topic of conversation that we've had. I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about some of the systemic issues that we're dealing with right now as a human race. I keep coming back to the fact that a lot of our systems, our societies, are set up for a win versus lose outcome and a win versus lose dynamic, an us versus them. And when we have that formula in place, of course, someone has to lose, but does it need to be set up that way? And I talk a lot about healthy tension conversations on this show. I'm not a fan of conflict, but I am a fan of discussion and real discussion that leads to forward movement. So my question for you, as you listen to the next 3 quick snippets of some of my favorite conversations of the last year, is to think about, why not now develop those tools for true listening and understanding in order to achieve more balance and not having that win versus lose situation? Before we get started, I want to tell you about my partners at Design Pickle. You know when you're in a pickle because you need a design, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. Many of us have been there. Design Pickle has been a lifesaver for me. Here's how they're set up. You pay a flat rate monthly fee, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. You heard that right. Unlimited graphic designs, unlimited requests, and the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. Why Not Now listeners like yourself get 30% off their first month at Design Pickle. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, many of the posts you're seeing on my social media channels were created by my buddies at Design Pickle, specifically Jacob at Design Pickle. That's what's cool, is that you get a dedicated designer. I'm on a first-name basis with my designer. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you-know-what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code WHYNOTNOW. That's all one word.
Also, you can now get Poopery at Target.
First up is Van Jones. He's a political contributor, a New York Times bestselling author, and he's worked in the White House as an advisor. He's known for being the voice of reason. Here is a discussion where I had asked Van, how do you maintain the ability to serve as a bridge and a connector during those heated conversations? Here's what he said.
Well, that's a deep question. When you're trying to be a bridge, your feet are still on one side of that chasm. You're just reaching across.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's some stuff that, I'm just not going to compromise on. I mean, there's some stuff to me that's just too core. I'm not going to turn on the Muslims and be a part of persecuting American Muslims. I mean, American Muslims are some of the best Muslims in the world and some of the best Americans that we've got. They got the lowest divorce rate, the lowest crime rate. They got the highest entrepreneurship rate. Every Muslim I know has either got a job or a business or a college degree. Why are we going to attack them? So I'm never going to back off of defending women and LGBT and the African American youth against, the criminal justice system. There's some stuff we're just going to fight on. But disagreeing doesn't mean we have to disrespect or disregard. And I think that what's happened now to the country is that we've gotten to the place where we forget, in a democracy, you don't have to agree. Dictatorship, you got to agree. Democracy, you get to disagree. But you don't have to disrespect, and you should always try to understand, even when you disagree. Understanding doesn't mean that you agree. But I want to understand. And when you start hearing people say, I'm just baffled, I'm confused, I can't even understand how these people are thinking this way, that's on us to be able to at least understand. And so when you see me on television, first of all, it may be the first time that you as a viewer has heard a conservative say whatever, outrageous thing they might be saying from your point of view. But before I got on that set, I spent hours reading right-wing blogs. I follow on Instagram and Twitter. I deliberately put in the search term white nationalist, right-wing, conservative, to make sure that my algorithm didn't just push me to more and more liberals to follow. I wanted to make sure that I consciously broke the algorithm so I could follow more people. So I've already heard a lot of these arguments bubbling up through the right-wing media before I ever get on set. So it's not my first time. So when they say something, you might be jumping out of your chair if you're a liberal, but I've already considered it. And it gives me the opportunity to say, well, you know what? I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you on these 2 points, but I still think you're missing these other points, and I want you to hear me on this. And I think it lands a little bit better because even my opponents on the right, I think they know that I'm going to call it fair. And I'm not going to go with a cheap shot, and I'm not going to just try to be right. And it gives me, I hope, a little bit more space to connect.
That's something that I did do after this election is open up my media outlet consumption beyond, what I had been. And in your book, you have a whole list of the diversity and you're encouraging people, right? Follow this person and this person and just at least be exposed to multiple points of view. And I think that's really cool. That obviously a huge tragedy took place with the mass shooting in Las Vegas. And I lived in Las Vegas recently for a few years, had many friends that were there, had a loss, and just the horror is just unbelievable. And one of my friends shared her story on Facebook about being at the event, and she shared really exactly what happened, almost step by step, as she was dodging bullets and feeling like she was in a video game. And she's running from this gunfire, and she makes a point of her post talking about having tighter gun safety laws. And the next thing you know, someone pops in with a meme and is just berating her, telling her how stupid she is, that that's not going to fix anything. And there was really no empathy. And in my opinion, it wasn't even a constructive conversation, or there was no logic. And this is to someone who, within 24 hours of that time frame, had been really running for their life. In those situations, especially on social, and you're talking about opening up algorithms, What's your best advice to try and, is that even a bridge situation? It seems like it's a...
Look, some people are just assholes. And look, I'm not a Pollyanna. Like, if somebody doesn't have enough respect for somebody who just, almost died, assuming it's even a real person, because sometimes, there are bots and stuff on Twitter. Twitter is completely infected now with non-humans making things worse on purpose. It's like part of, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's true. So assuming it's a real person, listen, you don't have to put up with abuse. You can block people, you can unfriend people, and you can just disengage because it's just not fair. Somebody in that situation is traumatized. That's just not remotely fair. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff, putting up with abuse, putting yourself in a situation where, you're just going to have to bleed out for somebody who doesn't even want to hear. But what I am saying is we still have to create some space somewhere for there to be some constructive dialogue. And the other thing, too, is sometimes we worry too much about words and too little about work. I think we should be finding ways to work together, whether we don't have to talk about all these issues, but when you've got this addiction crisis breaking out, when you've got kids growing up in broken homes, when you've got animals being abused, when you've got all these different things that are going on, let's just work together on some stuff. Because if we can fight about 80% of stuff, but you got to have that 20% where you're working together to keep the inflammation down so you still have a country. And so I am against abuse. I'm against bullying, but I also am against people having so low tolerance in their normal life. Now, let's get away from the most traumatic incident that's going to happen in her life. Let's go to another friend of yours who is on some other issue on some other Facebook page. And the minute somebody says something, that isn't exactly what we want it to be on LGBT issues or on Black Lives Matter, your liberal friend shuts them down and goes all crazy and self-righteous. You see, that doesn't work either. So we've got to be able to draw distinctions. When somebody's been traumatized, that's different. But both sides now have adopted a style of communication that is fundamentally, I'm right and you're wrong. Or worse, we're right and they're wrong. We're not even talking to each other anymore. And that has got to be balanced out. Sometimes that's okay. But what about the conversation that says, only this, I want to understand you and I want you to understand me. I don't want to agree with you. I don't want to convince you. I don't want you to convince me. But I really want to understand. And I want you to understand me.
If you want to hear the entire episode with Van Jones, you can head to Spotify, SoundCloud, or iTunes. It's episode 52. Also, it's available at amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now Van Jones. Next up, we have Tony Robbins. Tony is arguably one of the most well-known life strategists in the world. And in this episode, I asked Tony how we can exercise more empathy, more understanding for other people's points of view.
Well, I think you have to first see why we're there. And I don't think anybody knows exactly why. It's a combination of things that have gotten us to this point. Social media has great benefit, but it also has a great negative. And the negative is that people, they don't send a picture of themselves. They do a picture of themselves with 15 filters. They describe their life better than it is. And other people read the shit and try to compete by making more stuff up. So you got so much bullshit that's flowing around in social media. And then people evaluate their lives through someone else's bullshit projection. And they get depressed, they get overwhelmed. Also, in real life, if you came up to me or I came up to you and I say something horrible to you, there's some consequence. The consequence could be you or your friends. The consequences with me might be something if you challenge me physically. I'm 6'7", we might have a little altercation. but if you go to the web, you can be a 80-pound weakling who does not have any intelligence or care about anything or anyone but yourself, and you can go burn people all day long and make yourself feel really significant, thrashing people, because there's two ways to be significant. One is take huge risks, work your ass off, and build something, or the other is tear down everybody else's building, right? And if I can make you look smaller, if I can make you go backwards, at least in my mind, I have the illusion I'm going forward. So you have these dynamics in social media that have caused us to lose empathy in social media. And now that's just becoming a practice for people. You look around the country and where things are, And, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's communication style by any stretch of the imagination. But I also think saying I'm going to leave the country is the worst thing that's ever happened, and it's all over, is equal bullshit. Mm-hmm. It's equal drama. It's people looking for drama because they're not managing their own lives. And so don't get me wrong. If there's something that's unjust, we all got to stand up and do something about it. But I had a lunch with George W. Bush the other day. And I wasn't a big fan of George W. Bush, I have to be honest, because you see him through the filter of the media and all the things that have been said and done. When you spend 2.5 hours face-to-face with someone and you drill into their psyche, which is what I do, and I'm asking him all the decisions he made and why he made them, you might not agree with every decision, but when you hear what he knew, what the information was, you would probably make a very similar decision, and it creates a different level of empathy, a different level of compassion versus the bullshit judgment where you don't know everything. You only know what's fed to you, and then people get angry over nothing today. We've got an angry society. But I was asking him, I said, tell me how you feel about all this. And I really acknowledged him because he never attacked Obama, even though he disagreed with things, never verbally did. He said, you know what? I had my ears. These are his 8 years. And it's not me to give him stuff to have to deal with from a former president. That's totally Bush League. And I really respected that. But I said, well, will you tell me privately what you think? He said, well, I certainly would have loved to have my brother win. He said, but that clearly didn't happen. He said, but here's what I'll tell you, Tony. When people say the end's coming, he said, here's what I would say to you. He said, I'd say that when I saw Nixon destroy the presidency, destroy our country, President of the United States, a crook. And there he is getting in the helicopter leaving. He said, I thought that was the end of the presidency, the end of the strength of our government, our culture. And he said, it was totally wrong. He said, here's what I can tell you that I've learned. And it was really sage and simple advice. He said, listen to me. The office is bigger than the occupant. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so elegant and brilliant. He goes, Tony, that office of the presidency, someone can screw up, they can do all kinds of things, but we have an entire set of institutions that are a part of our democracy. And things can go up and down all around, but the overall, just like the market, is going to be strong because it's more complex than one individual. One individual can make a lot of waves and create a lot of upset, and they can create some problems, but they can't destroy what it is that we have because it's an institution that's greater than that. I just thought that was really, really interesting and brilliant. I think those people that are not feeling empathy, how do you create more empathy? Well, you can model some of the people that have worked in inner cities where kids have been so abused that they have no empathy. That, abusers, those that are abused become abusers very often. And if you look in Texas, outside of Dallas, there's there's people all over the country that do various things. One of them I know of teaches these kids to take care of an animal. And by falling in love with an animal and taking care of this animal, looking out for this animal, and developing empathy for the animal, they found that it translates to people. And so they have pets for every kid in the class, to give you an idea, that they personally look after. It's kept at the school, supported, and it has transformed grades, psychology, culture, and these kids. We all need to find something, start with something you do care about and expand that, you can get there. And then I think the second thing is to remember that everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have. When I was on CNN in the middle of, after the shooting of the 30 children that was there in Connecticut at, Sandy Hook. Mm-hmm. And I was working with some of the kids there and helping turn the kids around and dealing with all those things. And I was on the show, and it was the show was all about gun violence and eliminating guns, and there was just this same vitriol that you see today across so many different issues. All these people on both sides saying the other side is evil, and then doing horrible things, just horrible things. And I just sat there with this group, and I was the one opinion that said, "Can I just bring something up? Both sides are demonizing the other side, but let's just be honest. Both sides want their children protected. Both sides want the teachers protected. Both sides want no one to be hurt. The way it's being talked about, both sides are evil. It's total bullshit. You have two sides that want the exact same things. They just have different beliefs about how to get the job done. So let's stop demonizing and let's figure out where we're in alignment. We want our children protected. We want our environment safe. We want our teachers protected. Let's start with that, and then let's start to work with how we can do this. But when you demonize the other side, when you question their intent, say you don't care about our children, or you're just doing this for this. But my point of all this is we live in a world where the compassion has disappeared, and it's because we live in a world where everybody demonizes all the time. Social media has played a role. The media certainly has played a role. The media no longer gets up and does reporting. It's, if you watch MSNBC, it's one universe. If you watch Fox, it's another universe. If you watch CNN, it's another universe. And so we live in a world where you and I have to actually start to see everybody's got positive intent. They want their child protected. They just have a different belief about how to do that. Everybody wants the country protected. Donald Trump thinks you should put a travel ban. Other people say that's un-American, we shouldn't do it. But everybody wants to be protected. We have to align in the areas we are. And the greatest way to get compassion is get around people that are in need, or get around where people are desperately hurting and help somebody, because it'll put perspective. We feed 100 million people every year now, the last 2 years in a row. I'm going to feed 1 billion over the next 10 years. But I fed 2 million people a year forever. And the way I did it was I provided 2 million. The other 2 million came from my foundation. It was people went to my seminars who I convinced, go out one day a year, take your children and feed people. Wear a T-shirt and jeans, deliver a basket of food. Here's how you do it. Show them how to do it. But here's what will happen. You will realize you have no problems. You will realize your financial problems are nothing. When you go in a home where they don't have food and you see these people light up, and you're just the delivery person, even though you bought the food, you don't tell them it's you. So you're able to take in what they're experiencing, and it hooks you. People get hooked for life. That's how we grew it from, I was fed when I was 11 years old. We had no food. So when I was 17, I fed 2 families, and then next year 4, 8, and then, got to 100,000, got to 1 million, got to 2 million, now it's 100 million. And it's all grown out of that experience. And the people that do it come away with so much more compassion. And they come away also realizing they have no problems, because you think you have your problems till you meet people that have no food.
If you want to hear the entire episode with Tony Robbins, you can head to iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or my website. It's episode 26 with Tony Robbins. The URL for the live stream on my website is amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now Tony Robbins. And yes, we are now on Spotify. Super excited about that. Just launched, so check us out there. And last, we have Billy Corgan. Many of us know Billy as the face of the wildly successful Smashing Pumpkins. After meeting Billy this year and having this conversation, it quickly became my favorite episode of the entire year. So I hope you get to listen to all of it. But in this specific case, I asked Billy about his travels and how he thinks about empathy, how he thinks about some of the ways that we actually can come together. And he makes some pretty profound insights in this short clip. He talks about why it's so important to be careful not to attach our value system to someone else. So here's Billy.
As you travel around and you see some of the differences of maybe lifestyle and also more connection with nature, have there been any big aha moments as it relates to empathy, or any stories where you just wish that the rest of the world could see them, which is kind of what you're doing, that's the whole point, because it would maybe accelerate our process to being more empathetic?
I don't have any particular story that comes to mind, but I do know, I've had this thought many times, and I'll try to condense the thought. When you're walking through a poor area, an area that has seen better days, the downtown, the stores are empty. You're walking through a barrio in, Brazil, where, poverty is like inescapable in certain areas. You have to be very careful. If you truly want to be empathetic, you have to be careful to not attach your value system to, and then sort of through the lens of that sort of make a kind of judgment. Because that quickly turns into what you would do. I'll give you a perfect example. It's a bit of a detour, but I think it's interesting to explore. I read this book once and it was a very strange book, but it was an academia book, so it wasn't like a culture book. It was more like some professor had written it for academics, and it was a book about minstrelsy and the rise of blackface minstrelsy in the 1800s, and in essence the appropriation by the white culture of the antebellum South in middle 1800s in America the appropriation of that culture, the appropriation of African American / slave culture by what was white culture, whatever that culture was at the time. And so then he went into kind of empirical studies about how this is seen all over the world, and he used examples from Great Britain and stuff like that about how people, when they're poor, often tell themselves a story which goes something like this: we love harder, we eat harder, we make love harder, we live in a way that the guy up in the mansion at the top of the hill could never. Our feet are in the dirt. We're living in a way, very Tennessee Williams.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very, tormented, but sort of beautiful. And then in the reverse, also Tennessee Williams is, the people at the top of the hill are saying, thank God we're not in the mud anymore, writhing around like worms with the vermin. And both stories are lies. And culture, in terms of how it's reflected in the arts, is often a reflection of the tension.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a kid, rappers with the big gold chains. I know in the 90s when I achieved success, I was made fun of for driving a Mercedes-Benz. Not that anybody would want to do this, but you can literally go back into Spin Magazine 94, and there is a piece making fun of me for driving a used Mercedes because it was seen as some sort of sellout that I got a nice car, which at the time was the safest car on the road, which is why I bought it. But it was seen as a sign, like a betrayal of my values, assumed values, because I was from the street. The reason I'm riffing on all this is what I'm saying is, until you really, really, really stand in somebody's shoes and understand their culture, how they got there, what their family told them, true and not true, can you really appreciate why somebody would choose to live in a trailer in the middle of the country, 182 miles away from a Whole Foods. They're getting something, and just because you assume that what they're not getting is valuable doesn't mean that what they're getting isn't more valuable than what you're getting, because your Whole Foods is 0.6 miles away. And you have to be very careful with that. And I'm not talking as a class thing, because that's another trap. I'm talking strictly as a way people choose to live. Most people on some conscious or unconscious level choose to live a particular way. And as someone who grew up in the banal suburbs of Chicago, I dreamed about getting out. I had to get out, get me out of here. So I got out, and I learned the lesson of what getting out meant.
That's a very tangible, great way to frame it up, I think, and the power and opportunity in understanding differences. But the other fact is that we don't hear things the same. We don't, even if you do try to walk in someone's shoes or go experience their environment, it's still hard to achieve, right? A true understanding, because we hear things differently. We see things differently, like literally, scientifically we do, physiologically. So it's just this, I know that we'll be hearing more about this, especially as...
If I could just interrupt you for one. There's no more effective way of helping the body politic than sitting down and sharing a meal with somebody. We can argue about what color is the sky till we die. But when you sit with your neighbors and you break bread, in my case, gluten-free, when you break bread, that is an incredible effective way of crossing that. And, so I'm being a little bit colloquial here, but point is I wish more of us could just sit down and break some bread and just get on with it. The balkanization, and it's very virtual in many ways because of the way people are receiving their information, the balkanization of the American public, and that sense of, I don't know who my neighbor is, and what sign do they have in their yard, what candidate, and all that kind of stuff. It's just the worst possible thing, because most people, and I mean 99.9% of humanity, the entire world, if you sit at a table with them and you start laughing and sharing stories, it's pretty amazing. Look no further than there are American servicemen who go every year over to Nazi Germany and sit at tables with the guys they used to bomb, guys who were Nazis, and they sit at tables and they share a beer and they talk about, I went on this mission and I did this. And, there is a healing even for the what would be classified in this PC culture as the worst of the worst. There is healing that can be had if you are willing to just sit down and allow people to kind of erase that gray space. And I think once you get into the common areas of oh, my kid and da-da-da, that's when it starts to really work.
You can hear the entire episode with Billy Corgan on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. It's episode 25. Or you can head to amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now, Billy Corgan. Quick announcement. The Why Not Now podcast is now on Spotify. I'm very excited about this. I've been using Spotify for a very long time. All you have to do is head to Spotify and in the search field, type in Why Not Now, scroll down to podcasts and videos, and you'll see us right there.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?